Morning, afternoon, evening, or nighttime, of which time this gracious audience is watching. Welcome to another episode on the Shadow Council podcast with Gregory, Lewis, Shane, and Russ. Today's episode is the story of our 16-year-old self, which you'll observe on the screen of our younger 16-year-old self, whether it's awestrucken, hysterical, or impactful to you, how you stare at them. I would be the first person to say of the story. I felt similar to the community of the hoi polloi or the mass, the crowd, because among that time was my communist or socialist ideology fervor before I began this in-depth journey with Aristotle, with Spinoza, with Nietzsche, with Kierkegaard, Michel de Montaigne, etc., etc. But before I read those great names, I was uh, transparently obsessed with Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky. And among that transition phase, I was beginning working, which impacted my view for a higher utopia of socialism, of democracy, of egalitarianism, to say. But at the same time, this inner lack happened where I felt that I was being different and I desire that spark, that Heraclitean fire to speak of, or that river quote of the no man steps in the same river twice. That moment arrived when I began reading Aristotle. That was the true meteorite or asteroid that impacted my Earth, annihilated the old idols, and ushered the brave new world to say. No correlation to Aldous Huxley there. But 16-year-old me, long, luscious hair, obsessed with punk and mediocre metal music at the time, while at the same time had a goatee to resemble Leon Trotsky. I was resembling everybody but myself. That 16-year-old me was pampered, selfish, not humbled to the same degree that I am now. And another point is, what would my 16-year-old self be at this present moment? Still pampered, still selfish, but curious in a childlike sense, saying yes, no, and having a straight line and a goal. Lewis, you're next.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. Um, what was I like at 16, and when did I figure out that I was a bit different neurologically? Well, those are actually two different answers because I didn't really, I don't know. I was born in the 90s and raised in the 90s and early noughts. And generally things were much different and for the most part, in my opinion, much better than, at least in general. However, for my own story, my family unfortunately had some major health problems. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was very young, and though she survived, thankfully, it basically messed up the family's finances, essentially going forward from that point. So I grew up kind of with this sort of stress burden, like, oh, I have to make it, I have to be successful. I cannot allow myself to stumble or falter, otherwise I might get otherwise I might fall behind and be left out in the cold and miserable. And I did not want that to happen. So a lot of my youth and early 20s was basically spent on the grind, trying to get good grades, trying to do well, do well in school, work hard, get a job that I enjoyed and paid well, So I thought engineering was the best for that. So I went there. And basically, if I could go back in time and talk to my 16-year-old self, I'd say, you know, don't worry about it. Don't worry so much. The world is screwed up, and basically all of the life advice that the boomers gave you, you take it uh, with a big cup full of salt. You can't exactly trust that their advice, even if given in even if they believed it was true and they gave it with good intentions, it's probably not going to work in this crazy world that's coming up. So if I could go back to my college self, I would have said, you know what, um, relax a bit, drink more beer, flirt with more girls, have more fun, because uh, what's important isn't basic. It isn't numbers on a piece of paper. So I've found in my life there are 5 things that you want to try and maximize as much as possible if you want general success and flourishing. And those 5 things are your health, your your charisma, how well you come across to others, your network, who you know, because I hate to say it, but who you know is nowadays far more important than what you know in most cases, and also your skills, what you are capable of doing. So don't just be the type of person who knows everyone, actually be able to get stuff done. And finally, your knowledge, because as a human, you are heirs to a rich intellectual tradition. And what they teach in school, it's mostly useless, but knowing things and having a strong baseline of knowledge and interest is also a good thing to pursue, because it enriches yourself, and you never know when it might provide you with benefits. And huh, if I were 16 today, I mean, the world has changed so much, and since I was 16, I would say basically find out what your life is going to be. Try not to take try not to take on debts. If you happen to be very wealthy or very well connected or super smart and able to get insanely good grades, then you can go down the academic route. But if that isn't your strong point, and it's totally okay if it's not, then go down a different path where you actually learn and have experiences, and that might involve suffering, that will involve mistakes, but as long as you grow and learn from them and don't screw yourself up, uh, you should be able to land on your feet. So, yeah, thank you. And I will pass it on to Russ.
All right. Um, okay, so I'll start off by saying I had a little bit of time here while you guys were talking to think about what I'd go back and say. First, I'll say that I felt different pretty much always from the very beginning. I wish that I could be more precise whenever I say that. Um, to be honest, it's very good to hear from other people. That's how we triangulate truth, by the way. But I wondered for a long, long time. And I also kind of coped a little by saying, I think everyone probably thinks that they're very different and an outlier and weird. But time, both in revelation via what other people say, and also what evidence that I can gather by the way that people have acted around me. I think I did have something going on. Um, in an outlier type of condition. And we don't have time to get into all that on this podcast. I wish I knew, right? It's been a lifetime of trying to figure out the why of that. I don't know, a weird brain. Maybe mom ate something she shouldn't have during pregnancy. I'm not sure. But yeah, I've always kind of approached things in a weird way. I do think that being like an only child and being very given probably too much independence, um, and then being very, I don't know, I guess I definitely think my dad enabled me in a way because he really, uh, I guess he just thought I was smart in a way that he, maybe in some cases it was, uh, to a degree that he thought that I could handle myself. So I learned to, even if I couldn't. And there were certainly things that I wish maybe, I wish it's just so weird thinking back to that because it's like, of course I want independence and it's like I still fought for more and more of it. But anyway, that's probably what contributed. I can't get into everything on this version, but I want people out there that are listening to know that if anybody's like me out there and just feels like, man, I think I might be actually different from every other one of these people, that hey, you're not alone. So I don't know how common we are, but you're not alone. Um, and I kind of included that, thinking about that. I kind of wrote a little thing, if I went back in time and spoke to a 16-year-old version of myself, I'd say that narcissism is the greatest enemy. It's the great evil, but especially internally with the self, less so externally. When people try to reduce you or say, give you this, you are have a big head type of thing, they're not very important, but you have to make up the difference. You have to be the arbiter of the greatest enemy. Otherwise, you'll be just like everyone else that thinks that they're great. Don't let that hold you back. You are special. You are different. And using others as a baseline to understand yourself is only half as useful as you think it is. Step number one is escaping the rat race by any means necessary. That's the tutorial. If you need to accumulate a few dark side points along the way, you can find balance in that on the other side of releasing the shackles of the system. That's where you can make it up. That's where you can really shine and do great, good things. You might have to get your hands dirty to escape that rat race, but that's the tutorial. Get out of it. Then, if you feel guilty about anything, if you had to, say that a magic, a card worth $1,000 was maybe near mint instead of slightly damaged, hey, we can make up for that lie a little bit later down the road. Right now you need the extra $200. So, things like that. Whatever you got to do, um, cheat, rob, steal, whatever you got to do. Just get out of it because you're being oppressed by the system and you're inside of a system that is going to eat you up if you don't break some rules. This is a big one for everybody. Break the rules. Do whatever you got to do. Okay? But don't tell everybody you're doing it. Just do it. Get free, then save the world. Okay. That's about all I have to say, I think. As far as advice is concerned, the only other thing I'll say is that I wish that I had a role model. I wish I had somebody that I could look up to. There wasn't the internet like it is today. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't anything like that. So I really was looking. Part of the reason that I succumbed to some setbacks was because I couldn't find anybody the people that were supposed to be role models, like teachers or professors later, or sergeants in the Marine Corps, to an extent, parents and peers. Um, None of them provided what I needed as far as answering difficult philosophical questions intellectually. I found my peers in books, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We live in an age, especially now more so, where your peers can exist throughout time. And if you find that if you have more in common with the ancient dead, then let them be your allies and your peers until you reach a point where you find others that are worthy of the position. Took me a while. All right. That's what I got to say. Hope that was healthy for everybody. And let's pass it on to Shane.
Ayo. Um, I'm going to work in reverse to pick up on your point of role models, because we occasionally had assignments in school around that idea, and it didn't compute. It's like people look up to each other. Like, it was such a foreign concept to me by the time I'd gotten to high school. I was so consistently let down and disappointed by other human beings that I'd basically just given up on
And,
the idea of ever finding anything useful in any of them. Um, and it's
and
interesting you talk about finding role models in books. I probably should have read a lot more widely. I mostly just read science books, which are very inhuman for the most part, at least modern ones. And the fiction that I did get into reading was Patrick White, who is a very, I think that accentuated my cynicism about other human beings. He's a very poisonous kind of mentality about what human beings are, and I kind of wallowed in that. So looking back, that was something I could have done. There was a library right in front of me, and I could have explored it more open-mindedly, I think, but maybe I'd been too wounded by that point. But little story time for me in grade 10 of high school, my 16th year of my life that rolled around. I went into it with two passions. I was doing a lot of music. I played an instrument in the local orchestra, and I was getting lots of praise and encouragement to go down that path in life. But I looked around at like the people who were like music teachers and musicians, and I don't think I actually respected them. Like, it didn't look like uh, a viable path in life. And watching these people who were struggling encourage young people to go down a similar path, I'm like, is that really responsible? Um, and yeah, I just reached a point where I'm like, this is bullshit. I've got to make a choice. And uh, towards the end of the year, I announced I was giving up all of my instruments, and I'd grown my hair out really, really long, and I just got my sister to cut it off to like shave it to the skull as a kind of way of letting all of that go. So that was a useful thing. The thing I chose as an alternative to invest my money into in time and energy was science. So I'd been passionate about biology my entire life. I'd done most of that on my own because you do almost no science in actual school. It's mostly just babysitting. And senior grade 11 and 12 was right around the corner. I could actually do biology as a full course. And I very quickly became disillusioned with that too. It was kind of naff, I think is the correct word. And I then had the hope that, oh, when I get to university, it'll be the real thing. It'll be serious. It'll be inspiring. And I got to first year, and also that I'd like meet people who actually like were really passionate about biology. And I got to my first year of university, and it was a class of 1,000 intake students that year. And I went from person to person to person, being enthusiastic about biology, and I found nobody. Like, they were all there just to get a piece of paper, and most of them had no idea why they'd chosen that degree. They were like just trying to transfer into something else that somebody had told them was more desirable to get a job out of it. Because like nobody expected to make much of a career out of like studying science. And that should have been the point where I cut my losses and basically left university and done something else. Like I could have even left school in grade 10. Like, this idea that you're a smart person and you have to do more pieces of paper. But realistically, I was too much of a homebody. I was too sensitive and too timid. So the idea of, I don't know, becoming an ESL teacher and moving to rural Japan at that stage of my life there's no reasonable place where that idea could have come from. And in terms of real person influences in my life, I think there was only one person, this old lady who lived down the road, who was just a very ordinary but a very virtuous person, like one of the few, like through and through good people that I had in my life. And yeah, maybe I could have tapped into her more, but she probably would have given me very conservative advice that worked in her like greatest generation. And the boomers were hopeless. Like they're still brainwashed little robots just doing whatever they're told. Um, I guess I'm envious of people who are 16 years old now, even though the world is going to hell and falling down all around them. You've got an opportunity that the illusion is disintegrating. It's much harder for people to just kind of hypnotize you into following all the rules and being turned into a cattle for having your blood sucked out by the system. So yeah, my main advice would be to break free from the system, take risks, because the much bigger risk is doing what you're told, because you are lambs for the slaughter basically if you just follow the rules. So yeah, that'd probably be my bit of advice. And don't get caught in a false dichotomy. That was my problem. I was like, do I do music? Do I do science? And obviously one of those is going to be slightly better than the other, but it's like, do you drink Coke or Pepsi? They're both going to ruin your health and like waste your money. So you have to break out of that dichotomy that often the way life's problems are framed, it's like, is it A or is it B? And when you find yourself in that situation, be suspicious because somebody is probably herding you to, heads I win, tails you lose kind of situations. So yeah, break out, take risks. It's a big shaken up world at the moment. And yeah, get out there and bet on yourself.
All right. Yeah,
Mm.
I that was good. Good advice around the table. Try to think anybody if you have anything to add. I guess one thing that came to mind, just kind of, the last thing that Shane was saying there is that I do think that the false dichotomy, as well as the A B path, and a really large element of Neo is understanding that there is no resolution, there is no resolved state in time and space. There is no largest, there is no smallest, right? There's only the middle way. There's only the more complex answer. There's only more of the infinite, right? That keeps resolving. And so everyone out there, especially the concept of anxiety itself, is this idea that I can get somewhere where it will stop, right? I can get to a place where I no longer am a finite being you know touched by or being affected by or being exposed to the infinite. And that's where anxiety is, right? And unfortunately we're going to stay there, right? And so it's not let me get to this place where it stops. It's how do I embrace it, right? How do I embrace now as something that is not going to resolve? All resolution is simply a human construct. Monday, a minute, a year. These are labels of infinity, right? They're us trying to make order of it so we feel more comfortable. And so it's rarely ever a dualistic choice. When you enter into a conversation with somebody, it shouldn't be he wins, you win. It's always more complex than that. It's always going to be um, the most nuanced answer, unfortunately, is almost always more correct. You notice not correct, but more correct. That's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for percentages. We're aiming for closer to 99.999 because there is no 100. Um,
I have a
that
question.
is,
I have a
shoot.
question, and I've got my own answer for it, so I want to hear what other people would say. What would you recommend a 16-year-old today research to help them make better decisions in their life? And I'd start out by saying geopolitics. When you are young, it is much easier to move to another part of the world. The countries are more interested in taking young people in, particularly if you have a little bit of a talent and maybe a tiny bit of resources behind you. And that's the kind of thing you should start researching and planning probably when you're 16 and pulling off in your early 20s.
So now you said geopolitics,
Mm.
but you can learn geopolitics from a chair, right?
Hmm.
In any given location. So, but you kind of indicated, you kind of suggested more like international exposure,
Yeah.
in the flesh. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that too, that too. But I mean, just visiting a place for a little while and getting a feel for the vibe is one thing, but understanding a bit about its position culturally and economically and in terms of biophysical resources, I think that can be a useful factor to consider if you are open to the idea of doing something really dramatic with your life and moving to another part of the world. Like if I was 16-year-olds now, I would seriously look at moving to somewhere like rural Japan and being an English teacher. Uh, and I think that would be a really interesting thing to do with your life.
My friend Kyle did that
Mm.
exactly. He went to Japan and was an English teacher. Um, so yeah, very cool.
So
Yeah, I have an answer. Let's let somebody else talk. Lewis.
have a question actually for you, Russ. Could you go over a bit more about what you said when you were talking about like lying, robbing, and stealing? Because if you're not like in the group, that could come across as, highly immoral. So could you go over a bit more about like what you mean by that?
I guess that's a good point, but I almost like the idea of the audience interpreting that on their own and see where they land. However, yeah, because you're asking me a very hard question, right? With little time to answer it, I think. Um,
You could just say you were speaking
well,
metaphorically.
how about this, Lewis? What do you think I meant?
Hmm. Oh, turning it back on me. Well, my own perspective is that the system has basically lied, cheated, and robbed you, the listener, of everything. So basically, doing the same to the system is not necessarily immoral, but you don't want to go around, like picking people's pockets or taking candy from children, that's not, that's immoral. But the system that has basically existed to crush you, if you can exploit that system without harming others or being cruel or immoral, that I think is what you meant.
Yeah, so strategic, the big difference there is you said the word cruel. That's very important, right? It's kind of like the Sith, okay? The Sith don't do evil for evil's sake, right? That is madness, foolishness, and weakness. Um, no, I'm not saying you should become a Sith necessarily, but maybe this is a bad, reference for that reason. However, the idea behind the Sith philosophy is power centric. It's you do things for a reason, and the morality is something that you consider secondary. So when it's objective based. I probably shouldn't use that Sith example, so just wipe that from your brain, because I don't want a bunch of Emperor Palpatines out there. But he is a good example of aiming at a goal, and specifically in his case, escaping a system, right? Like as an he completely redoes the whole thing. However, that is kind of what I'm aiming at is find a way strategically to overcome the position that you're in. Don't hurt things, right? You don't go around hurting little, animals or whatever. That doesn't help your position. You can't justify that before a board of individuals that are judging whether or not you were, actually doing something useful. Utility is what matters here. That's really what I'm aiming at. Look at the utility of the action. The goal is to get out from under that which is oppressing you. And the answer to that isn't going to be cruelty. It's going to be Robin Hood. Robin Hood's the better example than Emperor Palpatine. And there's might be some other examples you guys can name. You know, it's not about, it's not even like these weirdo like anti-heroes where like for instance, like Batman has like ideas based on morality still, like I'm only going to punch people, right? It's like that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm not saying going around kill people. I'm saying that it's not about these like moral concerns. It's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy thing, right? You are being oppressed. You are directly forced to engage with capitalism, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is the condition for which you're under. And there are a lot of actors that are at the top of that want to stay there. And the entire system, the education system you're being brought up in, that's asking you what you want to be when you grow up instead of who you want to be. That whole thing is designed to keep you there, right? And the more questions that you ask, the worse of a student you tend to be. I'm saying to get out of that by any means necessary, right? That shouldn't include cruelty shouldn't even be on the menu, right? That would be something you would indulge in if you were a Sith after you escape the condition of oppression. You need to get out of that and consider everything. That's my long form action answer, Lewis. Let's hear from Gregory.
I've conceived from both what Lewis, Shane, and Russ is saying as a combination. Shane's correct of geopolitics on both a international, and Russ is correct at a home station of studying geopolitics. Lewis, he answered what Russ was saying, and Russ answered what Lewis was saying of the evil and not normative acts. How is because I'm gonna use this term in air quotes. Harmful individuals are useful in a geopolitical and national political sense for an aristocratic movement. What an aristocratic movement is with these harmful individuals is to preserve that species, to challenge norms, be innovative, and create higher values for the next new and fresh philosophers, generation, spirits, or the aristocrats that will supersede us. But at the same time, it won't be a static lineage or reputation of these people. No, because of how nature works, it's cyclical. It's eternally cyclical and in flux. So there will be a time once those aristocracies predominate the world, it will be in a sense in a form of decadence and a form of revaluation of values in the lowest and downtrodden sense. That's my answer from combining everybody.
Shane, we got.
I want to hear what your answer to the original question I had was. If there's a particular field that a 16-year-old should be studying, or maybe a skill set they should be mastering.
Oh yeah, yeah. So partly what I was saying, but that skill set's going to be that's more of a objective. I think that I've mentioned this before, and it's meta, and that is discernment. And I think that's because you're not alone. And this is kind of coming back around to what I wanted to say from the beginning. When I was 16, I reached a capacity for what I was capable of on my own. And I really wished that there was somebody I could have looked up to that could have given me more of a path, because there wasn't really a solid career path for the resistance, right? At that time, there wasn't people like us speaking about this sort of thing where people could hear it. It just wasn't. It just wasn't like that. That didn't quite exist yet. There wasn't, which is so weird to say, right? There was a counterculture, but it had nothing to do with any of this. Very interesting to think about, actually, like what was going on at that time. There wasn't really, I don't know, it just wasn't like that. So now those that are 16 are entering into a space in which there are people that I would have loved to have had access to, right? everybody has their own opinions about some of these individuals, but and so that's why I'm wary to like list those online that can be controversial. But I'll name somebody like Jordan Peterson. A lot of people have learned a lot from him. That I think he started a little bit of this, honestly, and then that whole crew of the dark web, the intellectual dark web I mentioned once before. So you have Weinstein and Neil deGrasse Tyson and uh, Sam Harris, different thinkers that were just thinking outside of the box. Those guys weren't around, even when I was in high school. So they were kind of the first spark of like, oh, wow, here's some people that are thinking differently that, obviously I didn't want to be them. I didn't agree with all of them or any of them completely, but I was able to see a model, a virtue ethical paragon or avatar that I could pick and choose virtues and traits from that were on a level that I was not seeing anywhere else in anyone around me that was telling me what to do. So, and then from them, I could learn who they read, who did they quote, who did they care about, and all of those were like treasure troves of knowledge, to go and find Dostoevsky or Jung or any of these any of these philosophers, Nietzsche. These people get named over and over again, right? And so you can just follow those like little like like spore, like a trail, a breadcrumb trail, and inevitably you'll find them. You'll find maybe us, right? That is like a satellite or a secondary source that you can actually, get involved with, and then you can find somebody that can actually ask questions. This is all discernment, right? Then you can say, hey, who would you read, right? Who would be the first person you would look at as somebody that went through philosophy and decided to leave the school and do your own thing? And I would say to you, start with Seneca. Right. I think you should start with Seneca because I think there's a lot of good stuff there for that any budding intellectual would benefit from. I know Gregory might not agree with me, but that's what you get whenever you can follow these trails and actually become part of something. You don't have to be alone. If you wanted to be in that like first boat, I'll tell you, you missed the boat, but it had its advantages and its disadvantages. Now these communities are trying to start, right? Use your discernment, train that meta level skill. And then it's about who you can find that's worthy of your time. So you don't waste as much time as we did, right? You can get started sooner. You can piggyback. This is what all of human history has been. Piggybacking the 70-30 rule, learning what people have learned before you, right? And then recognizing right where history is, where you can get all this knowledge quicker, have access to those of us that have spent 10 years on it, 20 years on it, and then you can tell us what the heck the next step is. That's exciting to me.
I'll answer Shane's question, and that was a delightful deliverance from Russ. He included me of, yeah, I know Gregory would disagree with Seneca, but I've become accustomed to where Seneca of the three Stoics, classified as Stoics, I adore his humor and his approach, different from Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. My answer to Shane is I'm going to use two short perspectives of both of the academic side and the horticultural side. The horticultural side is farming. That's an ability a 16-year-old, if not a younger individual, should tutor themselves or be involved in. Horticulture, a greenhouse, or farming. Not in the sense of, okay, I can just do all this greatness for the land and for other people. But at the same time, farming can humble and unveil blind and black spots of yourself of, okay, I need to train myself better in this place, and I need to control myself there and not overspoil the land, monitor the number of animals that are coming in because I'm attracted to them with my crops. So I'm going to have to do all of this, trim all these trees down. So you're from physical work, you're establishing and creating a form of a temple or structure and your morality and your self. Where the academic side enters the play of my first person I'd recommend for people to read is between Aristotle and Spinoza. Spinoza is this higher complex individual because of how dependent he is on reason and determinism. But I use Spinoza on the spiritual side of academia, while Aristotle I'd use on the political, ethical, and metaphysical side. It's to a degree poetical and rhetoric side of philosophy and the academic. But the combination or the unison of the two, if one can have this higher vision worthy of eagles, worthy of this supreme eagle bird eye view of imagination and climbing to that view too, it's delightful. That's my answer.
I would maybe, and I'm, for those who've forgotten, I'll say it again, I'm an experimental farmer. I've done my whole life doing this. Farming for young people, amazing if you've got the opportunity. But above that, I would even say learning how to cook from scratch, from really affordable ingredients, and do it on a scale that you can actually share it with other people. You could turn yourself into the pivot for a social group that you can cultivate other people around you. And this is another thing maybe we can explore in the future. It's one thing to like find the perfect, matching weirdo out there in the world to be your best friend for life and like, make each other's lives better. It's another thing to take people who have potential and cultivate them in subtle ways to be a better person both for you and for themselves. And I think that opens up a much bigger range of people. It's more realistic that you'll find someone who's cultivatable in your immediate circles than somebody who's already perfect off the shelf. And
You want to make an
if you learn how to feed them really, really good food on a regular basis, that's how you tame the wild beast.
if you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Yeah, so Shane's way or this. Lewis, haven't heard from you. We're running out of time. What you got?
Yeah. I think a great thing that you could study now if you're 16 is how to communicate, how to talk with people, how to be charming and elegant and eloquent, since that will absolutely help you pretty much everywhere you go and no matter who you meet. And from what I've heard, a lot of youngsters are now dealing with issues of anxiety, of social isolation, and of general nervousness when meeting someone they haven't met before and striking up a conversation. And I say, learn the basics, learn the theory, and then actually go and practice it, because that is one of the easiest things that you can learn and practice on your own and just keep getting better and better at. And it will never be a waste of time, basically.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll include something a little weird. Acting. I think acting is something that's can be very, very beneficial. Something I always forget to leave out of my background. But I did a lot of plays whenever I was younger. I thought it'd be cool. So I was, Huck Finn and a dwarf and freaking Treasure Island guy's best friend, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. I think there's a lot to be learned there that is kind of goes beyond words, actually. So I'm not going to say more, just that I think it's beneficial across a range of skills that are surprisingly useful and rarely mentioned. So theater. Anything else, guys? I think we can just about wrap this up. If anybody else has any condensed nuggets of wisdom, this is your chance.
Just a quick idea, pairing a budget, wholesome dinner party with a play reading is probably a good combination. Like waiting for like the local theater company to put something on and getting a part in it, and then turning up on a regular basis to meet your obligations. That's not something everyone can do, but anyone can like learn how to roast potatoes really, really well. Invite your friends over and say, "Let's read a play together."
Murder mystery, and make it a murder mystery.
Yeah, a little
All right,
condensed nugget of wisdom. Basically, if you have skills that other people don't have, those people could pay you for your skills. So you start developing them wherever they are. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to be better than the person you're working for, and you need to be able to make them happy.
I could use a plumber right now. If one of you wants to learn something about some plumbing, I could use you. All right, I think we're ready to wrap this thing up. Before I don't know if it'll cut us off or not, but I'm going to end with a little bit of rhetoric. We are on the cusp of something, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting something, and the world is beginning to turn in ways that it hasn't before. I rarely appeal in such a way, but I was watching some of my old live streams, and I think we're going to move in that direction. More information on that to come, and a special hi to my audience from nearly 12 years ago that's been checking us out. I was watching those, and I realized that at the end, I always kind of did a little bit of a rhetorical prediction and a little bit of perhaps inspiration. And that is to say that you can make a difference, really. The individual is infinitely valuable. Like each one, you're all real cool. And the system wants to homogenize that. But I really think, especially those of you that have listened this far into this podcast, call me biased. I'd like to see what all of you can become. And I'm interested to mix in a way that pulls new things out of myself and new things out of you. And I think that when we get powerful people, interesting people, unique people like this together, we enter into a collaborative effort that makes more out of all of us. And it's done in a way that is best described or best defined as something that's more than simple, right? It's something like magic, right? In the real world. It's closer epistemically, it's closer to magic than it is not magic. And that is that's when you realize how difficult it is to say something epistemically true, the fact that that is real is beautiful. And I think we can make something beautiful together. I hope you'll join us, and I hope you like this here episode. Let's all say goodbye, and I hope you'll join us for the next one. High five.
Amor fati, you new philosophers.
Amor fati.
Amor
All right,
fati.
guys. All right, next time. The end.